Welcome to the Gym Mastery Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Ramage. And on this episode, I have my friend Brian Zimmerman, co-owner of CrossFit Jungle Gym. He owns that with his wife, Vanessa. She's pretty awesome. They've owned that gym since 2011. They have a 3-year-old Maisie. She is also awesome. And a brand new addition to the family, Cade, has been with them for 1 solid week. I'm super impressed that Brian is on today recording. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for the intro, Scott. And, we had to delay the start of the call because, Cade peed on the floor and Maisie was super excited about it. But, all things life.
Yeah. So you've had a new body in the house for a week, and I'm assuming Vanessa is at home with you at this point. So how's the transition been?
I'll tell you, I learned from the first child that Vanessa's nursing again. So I'm useless at night. So right. I'm trying not to feel guilty sleeping.
That's good.
But it's, there's still some amount of guilt there, but for the most part, it's gone good. Vanessa, delivered, it went great. Mommy's healthy, baby's healthy. We're home. We got out of the hospital as soon as we possibly could. Good. Which is extra motivation, this year to get out of hospitals. But yeah, everything's great. Everything's great.
Were you allowed to go in there for delivery?
I was allowed to go in. And I know earlier in the year, they had some rules. I don't know if the dads were allowed to go in, and they had the women delivering in masks and stuff. And luckily Vanessa didn't have to deliver in a mask. And anyways,
it's hard enough to breathe as it is. I mean, I know that masks don't change your breathing, but it does mentally, right? I mean, it's there's something over my mouth. Yeah. Well, good. I'm glad you guys, that timing worked out well, because I know at certain points it would have been a complete pain, and how horrible not to be able to be there. So I'm glad you got to do that. So how's it been taking the time off? Because I'm assuming you're not going into the gym.
It's basically been status quo, I mean, to be honest with you, I've spent the last year and a half, more or less working from home and going into the gym when I feel like it, which, thinking about the timeline, 3 years ago, I was spending 50, 60 hours in the gym. And I started really taking the business serious when Vanessa got pregnant with our first child.
Right.
And that was the moment where 60-hour weeks are not going to work if I want to be a dad. So, we started making a lot of shifts then. And but for the last year and a half, it's been I'm required at the gym about 6 hours a week. And other than that, it's all optional. I like to be there more, but at this juncture in my life, I'm staying home quite a bit.
So you've been a guest on another podcast of mine, so you kind of know where I'm going. I think you pretty much led into my next question on purpose. I think you're pretty good. Maybe I'm giving you too much credit, but I want to talk about how you develop a business where you are working 60, 70 hours a week. You're basically living there more than you're at home. And then you go to, it's just status quo not to be at the gym, because I knew that would be your answer.
Yeah. Well, honestly, the first thing was there had to be some motivation to get out of it. I loved coaching a ton. And it wasn't really until I wanted some things for myself that weren't coaching. As a 20-year-old man, it's I love coaching and helping people.
Right.
And it was wait a minute, I can't do that 60 hours a week. Obviously the coach on the floor is 30 hours a week, and then, 30 hours, all the other stuff. But it was knowing that I wanted to be a really good dad was one of the biggest motivating factors. And, number one is the gym needed to be financially viable enough that either my wife or I could be home all the time, or we can split time, because we already knew that we didn't really want to do daycare or babysitters. We wanted to be super involved. And so having those conversations early on in Vanessa's first pregnancy with our daughter Maisie was like, all right, we got to make this thing work or we're going to can it. And that's going to be that. And so, I'm way too stubborn and up for just about any challenge that we weren't going to just can it. So the first thing I did, I said, I don't know if I'm perfectly capable of making this happen in the timeline that's necessary. We got 9 months, So the first thing I did is I went and got a mentor.
Yeah.
That was the big step. Once that happened, it's like, we were profitable from day one. I mean, we started with $50 and I'm a cash flow guy. Like, as long as we have a dollar going in the bank every month, we'll survive and we can continue on. And, from day one, even when we had $50 to buy like a kettlebell and that was it, and we trained at the park, like we just kept building from there. As long as we had an extra dollar in the bank, we were good to go for the next month. And, as like time goes on, it's like we just kept doing that. And, we're 6 years in and we're still just making a little bit more profit, but there was 60 hours of work that was happening and the profit wasn't enough to go, hey, we can both be home, or one of us can be home, or one of us doesn't have to work. So we got extra motivated to get a mentor and make that happen inside of 9 months. And we did.
So it took some sort of force to identify, I need to change something. I've heard you say multiple times, like, as long as I have a dollar coming in, we're viable. We're good. I've heard you say that many times in different conversations that we've had. So yeah. I know you live by that. And I knew that getting a mentor was a big pivot in your business. Why? What's so magic about making the decision to hire, I'm assuming Two Brain, go into through their incubator and then into that model? Like, let me hear it from listener A, who is now spending 60 hours a week in the gym and, is making about half of what they want to make. And then you say, hey, by the way, why don't you throw another X large sum of money at something? Do that equation for me.
All right. Number one is, if you're putting a dollar in your bank account right now, that's good. Right. Good. If you have any motivation to do better, somebody who's been there and done it before is just going to help you accelerate that. And, when I was signing up, I don't remember the exact cost that it was before, but it was thousands of dollars, and I'm like, I've been in business for, I got $1,000 in my bank account that's free and clear. Like, I could either give that to me or I can invest it in making more out of it. And it was like, no, like the timeline is what shot it into place. And I think about this too when I'm selling gym memberships. Is like, the more you spend, the more accountable you'll be held to whatever the action is that's in there. Like, if I'm spending $5,000, $10,000, $1,000, $100, whatever amount you're spending, you're going to put back the effort almost equivalent to the dollar amount. So unless you just run out of bandwidth, like you just don't have the time, and then you've wasted whatever that money was. But like, if I spend $5,000 on something, I'm going to put $5,000 worth of effort into it. And, was I nervous about whether I was going to get a return? You bet. You bet. Like, what happens? And, it was trusting the person on the other end of the phone that they were not BSing me, that made me do it. And if I could go back, I would have signed up 5 years earlier. And I probably would, maybe we would have had 5 kids. Right. I don't know. Like, it would have been a totally different scenario, but, it's like, I wasn't super motivated to become more profitable. I was profitable. It wasn't until there was a real push in the rear to say, like, no, this has got to be a lot better. So yeah, I think, like, talking with other gym owners, like, most people, like, when they set goals, and like, especially around this time of year, like everybody's talking about annual planning, like what their financial goals are, is like, and I see this big round number, 100,000. Like, well, that ain't going to do. I want to know down to the nitty gritty, down to the dollar, what you want to spend that 100,000 on. Otherwise, it doesn't mean anything to you. I know it certainly didn't to me. It's like, what's the minimum you have to make, and you add $1 to that. That's probably what you're motivated to make right now, until you put it on paper and say, this is what I want. And like, for me, it was, I want 40 hours a week with my kids.
Right.
And I want to still have the money to pay the mortgage and to buy Christmas presents. And like, you don't, unless you write down what those things are and the dollar amounts, you don't have a real financial goal, in my opinion.
I think that's a really great point. And I knew this about you. You approach things pretty scientifically. So you are going to say, if you want X, there better be Y, explaining why, or you better have a goal. And I really like that. Like, hey, if you just need to make rent and you want $1 more, that's where you're going to land. And that's been proven over and over and over again. So with your gym, how did you get to a place where you could walk away in everyday, you know, in the everyday operations, you could walk away and feel completely fine with whatever's happening there?
Well, you know, to be honest with you, I care too much to say that I can totally walk away and feel that way.
Right.
But in reality, it's like, you know, I put a lot of work into, you know, just caring in the first place. And like, that was, you know, I cared enough to run myself ragged. And I see it with other gym owners all the time. Like, there's some folks that pay $3,000 a month to do their hobby, to own a CrossFit gym. And, you know, like, people really care out there, and they have the first and most important thing. But after that, you know, I think, you know, it's, I don't know. Save me here, Scott.
I was just going to wait and see what you came up with. So you have a manager. What kind of roles do you have in place right now that help you with kind of keeping the out of the door?
Yeah. So the main thing is, like, we put a bunch of care into like everything we did. And like the next step really was like, write it down. What are we doing that's different? Like, and I think one of the toughest things, like replacing yourself in any of the roles that you do, like Vanessa and I, you know, we came from such a level of service. Like, we just did everything for everybody so that it would be an awesome experience. All they had to do is focus on do the squat,
right,
or, you know, show up, and everything else is taken care of. And it was teaching other people to think about service that way. And you do it by writing it down. Like this, when somebody walks in the door, this is what you do. You say hello, ask how they're doing, ask how their day was, and write their name on the board. Right. And like, this is how you introduce people in a group class. And this is how you clean the bathroom. And this is how I mean, it's like, you know, it sounds ridiculous, but it's like, write everything down. And at first, you know, it's like the cheapest things, like, how do you clean? Cool. I can hire a cleaner in 30 minutes. You know, you post to your local Facebook group that you want a cleaner, and you're going to pay $30 of cleaning or whatever. And you'll probably have 20 people reply in 15 minutes. And, you know, in another 15 minutes, you'll have 5 at your door. So we start with that. And, you know, then it was, you know, social media posts. And, you know, we just kept building it up. And, you know, now, like, to get to the point where I'm only required 6 hours a week, it's like giving the manager all of the SOPs that have been written, every detail, and then giving him the confidence to just make the decisions that make sense. And, you know, like, he's not me. He didn't write all the SOPs. He doesn't know them all. Things are going to happen slower than if I stay there and go, yep, I know right off the top of my head what you're supposed to do. But, you know, the trade-off is I get to stay home and be with my family and have a good time all the time.
So many people struggle getting SOPs down. Like, it's something I've noticed over and over and over again, is they just, like, you say, well, all you got to do is capture what you're doing and make an SOP out of it. Why is that so hard? Why is it so hard to just
because people have never done it before. They've never done it. It's so simple that it's difficult. And so I still write SOPs, like, and it's all to optimize what I'm doing, and then make it the potential that I can hand it off when the right financial time appears. But like, and I do this with my staff too, is I'll write it with them, like, especially if they have something that's an upgrade. But like, okay, here's what we did to sell out your run program. Okay, how did you do it, James? And we sit down and he says, here's what I did. And like, he's telling me and I'm writing it down, like literally, like, okay, you sent an email 8 weeks out. Write it down. And okay, you made a Facebook post with a picture of somebody running and you put a link to the sign up page. And you did that 7 weeks and 1 day out. All right, write that down. And it's boring, but once you do it one time, you have the roadmap. Yep. You have the plan right in front of you. And I mean, I don't think anybody understands this better than you guys. Like, there's a map of progression.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
SOPs are like the level method map of progression. What's the next step?
Exactly.
When I started working with level method, that was something that I had been working on, developing SOPs. I knew how to develop SOPs, but I've learned to take it next level. Like I don't even write them down anymore. I have an SOP for writing SOPs and someone else is doing it. So I'm all over that. And I do know the power of it, because once you have captured that thing in your brain, it no longer has to belong to you. It can belong to someone else who wants to take the time to do it, who has a value proposition with you to do it. And your value, you're placing the value you want on that. So SOPs, in my opinion, maybe this is a little bit of it too. It's a little bit like, now I'm replaceable. Do you ever get any like your coaches are like, nah, I don't want to do that, because it's like, I know how to do that. Or your manager, if I record this, someone else can step in and take my place. That's always something I've been concerned with.
I've definitely had a couple pushbacks on that. And depending on what it is, like, I think I've had some staff that like run a specialty program. They're like, well, this is my program. And I'm like,
exactly.
Well, guess what, man? If you don't write this down, like, it only exists in your head. What happens when you get hit by a bus tomorrow and all your clients are like, well, I guess we're just out, and then they never come back and nobody can replicate it or bring them back for you? Well, that's a problem. And I think one of the biggest ones is like, in business, or like in sports too, but it's like, if you're not getting better every single day, you're falling behind. If we don't establish the baseline, like, we're going to have to improve that SOP soon.
Right.
Otherwise it will be obsolete.
Yeah. And
if we don't set the baseline, then there's no way that we can ever expect to replicate in any scientific fashion to make improvements and keep moving forward. And so if you think this is the golden ticket, which right now it may be, it won't be in 6 months or a year. Like, it'll wear out and we'll need to update it. So, and somebody else will do it if you don't. So you might as well write it down and make it happen, because it's going to need to get improved, and it's our starting point.
Yeah. That's good.
Another good selling point for the staff is like, I think in this world of like, everything is connected, and like, I can reach you anytime I want to as your boss. Right? Like, I can text you, I can find you on Facebook, Instagram, email, text. Like, where can't I reach you? And I don't want that. I don't want my staff to have to live like that. And what an SOP does is, when you finish that sucker, like, if you have 5 SOPs assigned to your role and you do them perfectly, you will not hear from me. You will never hear from me. Like, you won't have to hear, why didn't you take out the trash, Scott? You filled out the checklist, because then you don't have to worry about whether I'm going to call you. I promise I won't. And like, that sort of thing just like takes the pressure off staff members. Like, because most of my team members want me to be happy with their performance, and in my opinion, they should want me to be happy with it. But like for me, I want them to feel happy about doing their job and knowing they did it well. And like to me, that makes the best staff.
Yeah, well, let's pivot this to your members. If SOPs are in place, you mentioned this earlier, even writing down, say hello to the person, write their name on the whiteboard, very clear and definable expectations. Members love consistency. And that is, an equation to win is consistency between your coaches. Do you find that, do you have like an expectation? Like if there's an SOP in place, you need to know it. Like, how do you handle that? How do you manage that?
One of the big roles that I've taken on over the last year was to take everything in our staff playbook, every role and task, and just narrow it down to the simplest form. So like, every role's got a single outcome attached to it.
Right.
And, ultimately, I don't care if the SOPs are followed exactly, if the outcome is reached. If the outcome is not reached and you didn't follow the SOPs, I'll be upset.
Right.
And like, I put like every one of my staff fills out a weekly or monthly checklist for their role. So they know exactly what their outcome is supposed to be for their role. And the SOPs are attached. So it's like everybody knows. And if they don't know, it's because they've purposely neglected to know. And that's another conversation. But everybody's expected to know and access where they can find that information. They shouldn't ever have to come to me to know how to do their job. And if they do, an SOP is written immediately.
Right. That's great. That's good. I think that the message is clear, definable roles that you can fall back on at any time, or processes, hence the P, that you can fall back on at any time. You don't know what you're doing if people don't know what SOP stands for. So
and like just to go back to the, like my scientific mind is like I think of SOPs even more so as like if we execute on SOPs exactly the same every time, that's the baseline. It's baseline. And like I think a year like this where there's been so much craziness is like you realize where your baseline level of operations falls to. And like for us, we saw it at a very specific revenue number. This is where our operations, when everything hits the fan, falls to, and it's exactly at this level. And I mean, it was within $200 for 4 months.
Wow.
This is how low it goes when everything's out the window. Cool. That's our baseline. It's not going to get worse than that. It's like we make improvements to that, then the trajectory is going to follow. So.
Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit. You live in a state that was closed for business for a long time, if I remember correctly. You're in New Jersey, and you guys were closed. I don't even know. Are you at full capacity? Full? You're probably not.
March 18th till. Yeah, I'm not sure. We were at no facility or outdoor workouts from March 18th till June something. So almost 3 months. And even when we went to outdoor workouts, there was a little bit of a gray area. Like, I'm reaching out to all of my officials and they couldn't give me a straight answer.
Right.
It took 2.5 weeks to get that. Oh, I think it's okay. And, we're just trying to play by the rules. I'm not trying to break any laws, trying to have any problems. But it was about 3 months. And then we got to outdoor workouts from June. And I think we could have gone inside in September, but the weather was nice enough that we just stayed outside and eliminated some of the hassles of going inside.
Yeah.
But then, on November 1st, we went inside and we've been inside since then.
Yeah. Okay. So what do you, a lot of gyms didn't make it. And a lot of gyms with that long of a shutdown and the restrictions that your state had, didn't make it. What do you attribute? What did you do in advance to get to the point where you kind of, I don't know if you sailed through it, but you were working at your baseline.
It sure didn't feel like we sailed at all.
Yeah.
You know, looking at the closures in our county alone, like I know of within 10 miles of us, 7 gyms that closed. So I you know, we're doing something right, I guess. But honestly, I think the main thing was like we were committed to staying open. Like, you know, part of it was like we're here to make people fit, and we genuinely believe that makes people's lives better. So we were like, that's a heart and head felt commitment.
Yeah.
And like, no matter what happens anywhere else or throughout the world, we were committed to making that happen. How it was going to happen, like we'd love to do it in person without social distancing and masks for a long time. But just because we have those sort of requirements now doesn't mean that we have to stop. No, like the goal is the same: get people fit and keep them healthy. So like, you know, having seen that like Italy and China were having shutdowns, like we had a couple days of heads up, and we started working really hard. Like I think we spent 4 nights where we got 2 hours of sleep, back to back to back to back. But we converted our entire business to online. And one of our squeaky wheel members was like, you guys must have been thinking about, you know, doing online training for months. You guys, you know, I didn't even notice any hitches. Like we just went right into online training. It's like you guys knew that it was going to happen and you were ready for it. It's like, perfect.
Yeah, that's what you want to hear.
That's what I wanted to hear. And I was like, if that's what you think that happened, then yes, we put 4 months of work into 4 days. Yes, you're right.
Exactly. That's what it was.
Yeah.
It was a lot of work.
Yeah.
And maintaining your poise during the process, because that is that it was a big shift for a lot of people that they did not survive very well through. In fact, it exhausted them. It absolutely destroyed them. Yeah.
You know, and I think another point that I would attribute it to, and this is, you know, in sports, right? And I think I wrestled as a youngster. And like, you know, you have when you're on your feet, then you have when you're down on the ground. Like you have 2 separate modalities, but it's the transition between the two where the largest opportunities lie to make a move that makes the world of difference.
Right.
And that transition from being in person to online, there's a short transitional window. And what we did is we went all in on those 4 days to make it happen.
Yeah.
And I think it's like when you see opportunities that are like transitions, like, you know, what did half the industry do? I sat around and said, let's see what other people do. Like we made a decision and we said, this is what we're going to do. And then we went, to our physical capacities to make it happen. And I think that had a lot to do with it. And I think that, our clients definitely saw the effort that we put in, and I think they appreciated it. You know, in the longer game, like they definitely appreciate it in the first month. I think over the coming months, I think there was definitely, this isn't what I signed up for.
Yeah.
You know, doing online training, and there's nothing you could fault them for that. And it was just a matter of, you know, like listening to what they had to say throughout and like trying to make improvements and just keep getting better every day. I mean, same stuff we normally do. Like here's the baseline. Cool. We've set it. We kept, you know, 90% of our members through the first month of shutdown. I don't expect everybody to stay, but if we keep improving, they'll see that we're still improving and be willing to stick it out. So, and you know, for the most part, that was a winning strategy, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it does sound like a winning strategy. You mentioned earlier that you got in this to, you kind of talked about purpose. You kind of talked about a mission, like what I would see as a mission or a vision. Like we want to help people. So did you making decisions when COVID hit and all these restrictions came into place? Did you at once fall back on your vision as a company or as a business?
How do you mean?
Did you make decisions based on the things that you'd already?
Unequivocally, yes. Like I when I think of our mission and vision, I don't really see, like, it's not like when I look at somebody else's mission and vision, I see like, oh, it's like a thing they wrote. Like ours is like, this is my life. Like I believe that we need to do this. This is a duty. And then it's like our values, like those are the only rules I play by. Like if I break one of those, I will actually be heartbroken. It's not like a thing I wrote down and like I aspire to be. No, this is, if I make somebody feel like they don't belong in my gym, I will be heartbroken.
Right.
And if for example, like belonging is one of our values, if somebody else at our gym makes somebody else in our gym feel like they don't belong, I will absolutely kick them out on the spot. Like I'm not waiting around. Like if you make somebody feel really uncomfortable, like they don't belong at our gym, you're out. I don't even care. And it's like, it's because I just feel very passionate about what we're trying to do and how we're going to do it. And articulating that makes it a lot easier in times like that are tumultuous to go, yeah, those are really it. I'm glad I wrote them down. And like, everybody gets to see my actions measured against those because they're public. Like, yeah, all my members know what we're about. We wrote it down and shared it. And if we weren't, I'm pretty sure there's a good bunch of them that would have called us out. So I think we live it. But yeah, definitely, absolutely.
So I think that was, I kind of look at retrospect in a way that gyms handled all this stuff and anything. Did they make a decision to bring on Level Method? Did they make a decision to bring on new programming? Did they make a decision to start a new system in their gym or bring on a different platform for X, Y, and Z? Like, it brings confusion to your members only if it doesn't align with your values and only if they don't know what your values are. So how do you make your values known?
Well, we've got them published like as a blog post. I share them at least annually, like,
yep.
And like, between like our staff, like they're talked about in staff meetings, all of our decisions are made on them. And like it's funny, like our coaches group, the top banner of it is here's our mission, vision, and our values. So like, it's present in our actions. It's present visually, it's present on our blog, and we share and tell stories about it as often as we can.
Yeah. So it's like a guiding light. So it's a compass for you.
Yeah. And like, for Vanessa and I, like, this is just how we live. These are the things we do. And it was like writing them down that made it real for other people. Like, why, like, this is, before we wrote them down, it was like, why is Chris acting like that?
Yeah.
Like, and I wanted to do something differently. And it's like, well, do you have it written down in SOP? No. Well, we wouldn't even need the SOP if he knew what we're trying to accomplish here with this business and what our values were. He would make the right decision, or he would know that he's making the wrong one. And whether he wanted to stick around at that point is a whole nother conversation. But like having communicated, articulated, and then communicated that stuff makes it easier for people to align with what we're trying to accomplish. And, we've had members and staff that just don't align, and they don't stick with us. It's like, we don't have cultural problems because that stuff is communicated. And that's, it's one of the most important things to me, that everybody really enjoys their time. And like, selfishly, I don't want to go to work and hate the people I'm around. So right. Yeah, you got to be cool, and you got to make me feel comfortable, and I should make you feel comfortable. And if not, then I will recommend you to the gym down the road.
That's right. Do you work with other gyms as a mentor, and you don't have to divulge any information, but have you noticed that some gyms operate with people inside of their building that they would just be way better without?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Why do people put up with
yeah, I don't know. I can't speak for them, but I know when I would tolerate it before I articulated what would make our gym awesome and what makes it awesome. It was like, especially when there was financial pressure, like, oh, to be profitable, I need these members. it was like, I got to keep them. But little did we know, when we get rid of them, then we would fill that space with 3 new awesome members who fit with us, and it would be 10 times better.
Every single time. I tell
every single time.
Don't fight it. Like you realize if someone is grinding in your head and not working within your own vision of how things are going to be, there are 80% of the other people feeling the exact same way, especially if you've developed that culture and the values within that building.
Yeah. It's funny because I was on a call today. We were having the same exact conversation. I was like, go have the conversation today, because there's no sense in letting that linger around for any longer than you need to. Maybe the conversation fix it. Because as oftentimes as people say people don't change, like some people just don't know, they're misbehaving. And, we give adults a lot of credit for supposing to know things. And, like with a kid, you'd be like, oh, stop doing that. And sometimes adults need to be told that too. So
yeah,
I have had a really great member he was just annoying. Yeah. Like it was every session, like there's something like, and like one of my favorite lines was like, we got some new bikes and we had some old bikes. And he's like, people filled in on the new bikes fast as they could. And he's like, oh man, I got to go sit on the old relic. And I'm like, it's funny, but when it's like day 369 of you saying stuff like that, like, all right, this is enough. And it's like every day. And like, it took one 15-minute conversation and he's been a perfect member for 2 years.
Yeah. I think there's you have to have some clarity about how to approach these things, because sometimes it is, there's a book, Crucial Conversations, talks about the importance of like kind of having these conversations, because sometimes people just don't know. But then there's the thing of it's clear as day, someone needs to go. The beauty about that, and what I think a lot of gym owners don't realize, is that they're not only buying themselves the freedom from that person, they're buying themselves, they're buying the other people who align with them, which is most, the same freedom. And then quite frankly, that person probably isn't a good match for your business. And you're buying them freedom by saying, hey, look, there's probably a better place down the road that might align with your values a little better.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the lesson, like where that lesson really like sinks in with me, is like, I had a member, I knew she was a wrong fit, and I signed her up, and she cancels, and you're like, good, thank you, I'm glad that happened. And then she writes a Google review, and you're like, my bad decision is not punishing me every time that somebody goes on Google and looks at my business. I should have said no sooner. I should have said no before you even signed up.
Yep.
And you go, I'm not making that mistake again.
Right.
And it's a painful one to learn when it's your first not 5-star review, and it shouldn't have been there. Should have been there.
That'll cost a lot more than the couple $100 you benefited in the short term.
Yep.
It's like, yeah,
100%.
I've who knows how many leads I've lost because of that review.
Yep.
And unfortunately, that you sometimes have to learn that the hard way.
Yep. Yep.
So we're running out of time, but I wanted to ask you a question I ask every gym owner that I feel has worked really hard at creating a set of rules and processes and things that give them a little freedom from their business so that they can look from the outside and operate at a higher level. So my question for you is, and I know you've heard this, because when I first met you in person, we were at a 2Brain Summit together, and I met you and your wife. I'd talked to you before, but this was in person, and it's where I heard this. And it was about the bus test. Can you pass the bus test if you got hit by a bus today? And I think Chris Cooper was talking about it. I don't remember quite perfectly, but I want to ask you that, like, if you were, your wife is also involved in the business, so let's say something were to tragically happen to both of you, or you went away for a month. Let's just say you went away for a month and you didn't give your staff any notice. Would your business survive?
Yeah, 100%. If you asked me that question a year ago, So we've replaced Vanessa in operations through COVID, which has been a crazy time to bring an operations manager and like totally take her out. But yeah, like if no matter what happened to Vanessa and I, like the staff would go on running the show, and like, you know, I think members would miss us. They'd come to our funeral, but go to the workout right afterwards. So
yeah. And some people are like, well, that really sucks. That, you know, that doesn't feel good. But really, what is your vision? Again, it was to serve people.
Not I want my business.
Brand.
Yeah, this business needs to last. Yeah, we need 100,000 of them or more.
Yep.
And we need them doing good work to change the world. Like if everybody's taking care of their health and fitness, what in the world isn't better? I mean, like literally everything. I mean, it needs to last way beyond me.
So you brought level method in maybe before you had your values listed out, maybe not, I don't know. Why did you bring level method in? And how did it align with how does it or did it align with your values?
So if you've listened to this whole episode, you know that I like baselines and objective data and progress. The biggest thing for me is I think one of the biggest things, like I've been coaching for a long time, and like level method is plastered around in my brain, and writing it down as a SOP is a painstaking job. I didn't write it down, but It was in my head. So like anytime a client said, oh, what should I do next? I could pull it out of the brain index card and tell them. Well, in scaling my business, I didn't have coaching staff as experienced as me that could just do that on a dime. And if I want my business to grow as fast as the demand necessitates, I need them to be able to find that information as quickly as I can, or close as quickly. Like I can do it off the top of my head. They can go over to the map, find it on the chart, and go, this is what's next for you. And if we can do that for every single person that walks in our gym, and we can keep them moving along the map, like I know that I'm a performance junkie, and I look at that thing and I go, yeah, I want to be red 5. And you know, if we can get people to focus on performing better, we all know that people who can do 5 pull-ups are fitter than people that can't do any pull-ups. And if you can deadlift 200 pounds, you're stronger and you're more capable of surviving whatever comes than if you can't deadlift 50. And what this does is just take all that objective stuff, give it to clients so it's easy for them to see the progress. And like we get to celebrate positive moments all the time. They can see how valuable we're becoming, and we can get them addicted to taking care of themselves because it's like a game. And I mean, I could probably go on for hours, but it's one of the best things I've ever seen for fitness. And it makes business so much easier because I can scale my coaches up because they can take all the information that's in my head, or, you know, in your guys' head, and this now put on the paper and apply it and be functional for anybody that walks in my gym. And that is huge.
Yeah. I've never had anybody put it that way, but there's a lot of people that would probably feel the same way. The fact that it allows you to level up your business, because I mean, many owners have tried it themselves, but to duplicate it, you can't duplicate it unless you take the time to create that massive SOP, which Nathan actually created. Yeah. So, man, I really appreciate you and Vanessa. I mean, you guys are a total asset and a value to Level Method. It's been super fun getting to know you over the few years. I think it's just the beginning. So I'm glad you guys made it through the COVID.
Yes. Yeah. You know, I don't know that it's over, but we're still cranking, and it's looking brighter than it was 4 months ago. So I like our odds.
That's right. And so as a last note, congratulations on Cade, 1 week old. That's a awesome thing to have happen amidst this global pandemic and the business that you're in. Kudos for that.
Thanks so much, Scott. It was a Pleasure being on the show.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Gym Mastery Podcast, where we try and give you the words of advice from masters in this business who have done it the way it needs to be done. And we would just literally want to share that with you so you can repeat and survive the bus test yourself. So thank you so much. Hit that subscribe button. You'll learn all sorts of amazing nuggets. If you are interested in Level Method and have not done that, you can tap into our large SOP among other SOPs and join levelmethod.com, hit the discovery button, and we'll set up a no pressure call, or we'll just kind of fill you in on what it is and see if we're a good match. Have a great day.